When you close your eyes and I say the word Niagara, be honest with me. What is the very first image that hits your brain?
I mean, it's the Horseshoe Falls, usually followed pretty quickly by, a yellow rain poncho, maybe the sound of a slot machine paying out.
Yeah, the classics. A waterfall and a casino. The standard day trip. You
Mhm.
drive in, you get misted, maybe you lose $20 and you drive home. It's a ritual.
It really is.
But we have a stack of documents on the desk today that suggests that image is not just incomplete, it's actively being dismantled.
Yeah, we are looking at a region that is already generating, what, $3.8 billion in tourism revenue?
Right.
But the data suggests they are tired of being just a day trip. They are engineering a massive pivot.
And that is exactly why we are doing a deep dive today into Niagara 2026, from waterfall to world-class destination. And just to orient everyone, today is Monday, March 2nd, 2026.
Mhm.
The insights we are unpacking, they come from a high-level summit that took place just last Thursday, February 26th.
Right, at the Stone Mill Inn in St. Catharines.
Exactly. The Niagara 2026 Building Tourism Momentum and Strategic Alignment Summit. And this wasn't just, a ribbon-cutting ceremony with stale coffee.
No, definitely not. This was the Ministry of Tourism, senior economists, and the actual operators on the ground,
The people actually running the hotels and the wineries?
sitting down to figure out how to rewire the entire region's economy.
Right. And before we get into the machinery of how you actually do that, and trust me, the machinery is fascinating, we should mention this deep dive is brought to you by BusinessLink.
So if we had to boil down the mission of this summit, what are we really looking at here?
The core theme was alignment to execution. The idea is that the planning phase, the endless strategy meetings and PowerPoints,
They're effectively over.
right, they have the roadmap. Now they are building the actual machinery to turn Niagara into what they are calling Ontario's playground.
Ontario's playground. I mean, that's a heavy title to claim.
It really is.
It implies a lot more than just looking at water falling over a cliff.
So let's start with the people who have to actually build this playground. We have notes here from Daryl McMillan.
Right, he's the executive director of the Tourism Partnership of Niagara, or TPN.
Yeah. And McMillan used a phrase that really sets the stage for everything else we're going to discuss today. He talked about the shift from stabilization to growth.
Let's unpack that a bit. What does stabilization look like in this specific context?
Well, context is key here. For the last 2 years, post-pandemic, the TPN was essentially in survival mode. They called it stabilization.
Just keeping the lights on.
Exactly. Managing debt, getting tourists to come back at all, it was very defensive. But McMillan's message was that as of 2026, that era is finished.
They're moving on.
They're moving into a phase of impact, alignment, and growth,
So they are going on offense.
aggressively. McMillan outlined a strategy built on 5 pillars: attractions, gaming, wine and culinary, arts and culture, and crucially, transportation.
But honestly, the most interesting part wasn't the pillars themselves. It was how they planned to manage them. He talked about a shift in governance that sounds super dry on paper, but is actually explosive for a region like this.
You're talking about the move to a skills-based board, right?
Exactly. In regional tourism, you traditionally have boards made up of representatives. Someone from the town council.
Someone from the hotel association, someone from the local chamber,
Right. It's political. It's about representation.
which, that can lead to gridlock pretty fast.
Precisely. McMillan noted they have moved to a board of 13 directors chosen specifically for their technical expertise: finance, legal, marketing, governance.
So instead of running it like a town hall meeting, they're running it like a corporation.
They have to. You cannot manage a $3.8 billion pivot with just enthusiasm and local politics. You
Yeah.
need technical execution.
Yeah.
They're professionalizing the engine room of Niagara tourism.
Okay, so the engine room is upgraded, but an engine needs fuel. In this case, the fuel is visitors. But reading through the notes from Helen Leffler, she's the manager of marketing,
Right.
it seems they don't just want any fuel.
This is the second big shift: volume versus yield. Historically, tourism often chases heads in beds. Just get as many people as possible through the turnstiles.
Right. Pump up the numbers.
But Leffler is pivoting to yield. They want the right visitor.
So define right in this context. Are we just talking about wealthy people?
It's a lot more nuanced than that. It's about someone who stays overnight and spends money in multiple categories. Leffler's team has done some really deep segmentation work.
Yeah, the data here is wild.
They've identified 9 specific profiles for Canadian visitors and 8 for U.S. visitors. They aren't just blasting ads to everyone anymore. They are sniping high-yield targets.
And crucially, they're trying to get them to come when nobody else is there.
The seasonality problem.
Yes, everyone goes to Niagara in July. Nobody goes in February. Loeffler discussed a campaign called Big Thrills, No Chills,
I saw that. It's a really clever way to rebrand winter.
because it addresses the barrier head-on. People think Niagara in winter is cold, wet, and miserable.
Sure.
Big Thrills. No Chills frames it as an indoor, excitement-driven destination. It highlights the gaming, the culinary scene, the shows, things that don't depend on the weather. And they have this all-in on events section on their prototype website now.
It's interesting because they are actually backing this up with cash. The partnership program has about $613,000 flowing into specific projects. And looking at the list, these aren't just ad buys.
No, they are product investments.
Mm-hmm.
They are funding things like the Honoring Indigenous Voices exhibit at Old Fort Erie or the Wineries of Niagara on the Lake Strategic Growth Roadmap.
That indigenous exhibit point is vital. It feels like they are trying to deepen the cultural bench of the region so it's not just surface-level entertainment.
Exactly. That's the arts and culture pillar in action. If you want people to stay for 3 days, which is the ultimate goal, you need more than a waterfall. You need history, you need narrative, you need depth.
Okay, so the strategy is sound. The governance is professional. But I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
We can build the best playground in the world. But if nobody can afford the ticket, it doesn't matter. The economy has been, well, weird is a polite word.
It definitely has. And that was the elephant in the room at the Stone Mill Inn. Thankfully, they brought in Andrew Grantham, the senior economist at CIBC, to give them a reality check.
Was it a depressing session?
Surprisingly, no. Grantham described the macroeconomic environment as stabilizing but fragile.
Let's unpack stabilizing. What are the numbers actually saying there?
First, interest rates. The Bank of Canada rate is down to about 2.25%. Grantham noted this is slightly below the neutral rate of 3%.
Okay, for the non-economists listening, let's define neutral rate.
Right. The neutral rate is the theoretical interest rate where the economy is neither overheating nor cooling down. When the central bank drops rates below that neutral line, they are actively trying to stimulate spending.
It means money is cheap,
Exactly. That usually encourages people to borrow and spend.
which is theoretically great for tourism. But what about the trade situation? Earlier this year, the headlines were screaming about CUSMA and tariffs. And just to be clear to you listening, we aren't taking any political sides here. We're just looking purely at how this impacts the economics of tourism.
Right, strictly the data. And there was a lot of fear there. But Grantham's take was that the reality is actually less severe than the rhetoric.
Okay.
He pointed out that despite the scary headlines, Canada's effective tariff rate remains low compared to other nations. We aren't in a full-blown trade war, even if social media makes it feel like we are.
But Grantham brought up a concept that I think is the key to this entire deep dive. He called it the substitution effect.
Yes, this was the big aha moment of the economic session. Because if you look at the raw data, U.S. travel to Canada is down slightly. Their spend is down about 10%.
Which sounds like terrible news. Less American money coming across the border.
It does, but Canadian domestic travel is up.
Why is that?
Because we aren't going to the States. The exchange rate makes a week in Florida or New York incredibly expensive right now.
Right.
But Grantham noted that high-income Canadian households have stored purchasing power, savings they built up over the last few years.
So they still want luxury. They still want to travel.
Exactly. But they can't justify the U.S. price tag.
So they substitute.
They substitute. They swap the expensive international trip for a high-end domestic trip. They go to Niagara, they stay at the nice hotel, they buy the premium wine. Niagara wins by being the best alternative to an extensive trip abroad.
It's the home field advantage.
Precisely. And Grantham pointed out a timing issue here, too. Federal investment in infrastructure, things like roads and rails, is increasing by about 8%.
Which is significant.
It is, but that payoff is long-term. We're talking 2027 or 2028. The immediate economic win right now is this domestic traveler staying home.
That's a fascinating dynamic. Basically, the weaker dollar keeps Canadians home, which fuels the local tourism economy. But we can't rely on Canadians forever. We still want those American neighbors coming over.
Right.
And we heard from Brooke Heisterkamp and William Shatton from Destination Ontario, and they highlighted a really strange paradox regarding U.S. travelers.
The sentiment paradox.
Yeah. This is where psychology meets economics. The data showed a significant dip in Americans feeling welcome in Canada earlier in the year.
I assume that's the political tension bleeding over.
Exactly. Tariffs, Political posturing, it all filters down. Americans were basically telling pollsters they weren't sure if Canada liked them right now.
Right.
But, and this is the huge twist, 97% of the Americans who actually visited reported feeling safe, welcomed, and respected.
So the perception was stay away, but the reality on the ground was come on in.
The gap between the news cycle and the actual experience was massive.
Yeah.
Destination Ontario realized they couldn't fix the politics, so they decided to bypass it completely.
What did they do?
They ran a billboard campaign targeting U.S. drivers that didn't talk about friendship or diplomacy at all.
What did it talk about?
Math. They just showed the real-time exchange rate.
Come here and your money is worth 30% more.
Exactly. It's brilliant in its simplicity. It drastically increased the value for money perception. It's a very pragmatic approach. We might disagree on tariffs, but you can't disagree with a discount.
And it worked.
It worked. It reminded them that Niagara is a bargain.
I love that, bypassing the heart and going straight for the wallet. Now, looking a bit further down the calendar, there's a massive event on the horizon that forces all of this alignment to happen really fast.
The FIFA World Cup.
The World Cup is the ultimate catalyst. Toronto is a host city in the summer of 2026. But the research Heisterkamp shared is just staggering. They found that 90% of visitors coming to Toronto for the World Cup plan to leave the city for side trips.
90%. That seems incredibly high.
It's almost everyone. People are coming from Europe, South America, Asia. They aren't flying all that way just to see the CN Tower and go back to the airport. They want to explore. And here is the major win for Niagara. 54% of those visitors plan to go to Niagara.
Over half.
That makes it the #1 planned side trip. It beats out Ottawa. It beats out Hamilton.
That is a tidal wave of international travelers, people who might never have considered Ontario otherwise.
It is. But this brings us to the microeconomy. We can talk about millions of visitors and macroeconomics all day, but who is actually serving them?
Right. Who is pouring the wine and changing the sheets?
Exactly. Blake Landry from Niagara Region Economic Development gave us a look under the hood, and the engine is running a bit different than I expected.
This data surprised me, too. I tend to think of Niagara as big hotels and corporate casinos. But Landry said 94% of tourism businesses in Niagara employ fewer than 49 people.
It's an ecosystem of small players, mom-and-pop shops, boutique wineries, small tour operators.
But Landry highlighted a structural shift that is both fascinating and a little bit concerning.
You mean the productivity shift?
Yes. Look at the numbers. Total GDP for tourism in the region is up. It's hitting $1.4 billion. But employment is down. There are 36,305 jobs in the sector right now. Pre-pandemic, that was 43,000.
So revenue is up, but jobs are down by almost 7,000.
Correct.
Usually when a sector grows, jobs grow. Why the disconnect here?
Landry's insight is that this isn't just a labor shortage. It's a structural evolution. Automation, technology, self-check-ins, online bookings, QR code ordering. The sector has become leaner and more productive.
They are generating more value with fewer hands.
Exactly.
That's great for the bottom line, but it changes the entire nature of the industry. If I'm a small business owner, I'm doing more with less, but I'm probably stressed out of my mind.
It puts immense pressure on the remaining staff. But the metric Landry was most excited about wasn't jobs. It was length of stay. It's creeping up to 1.7 nights.
Why is 1.7 the magic number? Why not just count total visitors?
Because the moment someone stays overnight, the economics explode. Food and beverage spending is up 3.6%. If you stay the night, you eat dinner, you buy breakfast, maybe you have lunch before you leave.
The day tripper buys a souvenir and a hot dog.
Right. The overnighter buys a glowing experience.
So the goal is to get that 1.7 number even higher. Which brings us to the moonshot.
The moonshot.
This was the address by Nancy Kennedy, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Gaming. She laid out the Destination Niagara strategy. And she threw out a number that I think made everyone in the room stop taking notes and just stare.
25 million visitors.
25 million, up from roughly 13 million now. That is essentially doubling the visitation, doubling the economic impact.
It's wildly ambitious. Doubling a mature market like Niagara is almost unheard of. But what makes it different from just a wish is the approach Kennedy described. She called it an all-of-government strategy. She used a specific term, the government, as a Sherpa.
Explain that, because usually when I think of government and business, I don't think Sherpa. I think obstacle.
Right. But the idea here is that the ministry isn't just a regulator telling you what you can't do. They act as a guide, a Sherpa, helping businesses navigate the red tape of other ministries.
Oh, interesting.
They are coordinating infrastructure, gaming, and culture all at once to clear the path for growth. It's about removing friction.
And they have some very specific, very large projects in the pipeline to get to 25 million. They mentioned an active request for information, an RFI for something big.
A large-scale, four-season theme park-style attraction.
That's the game changer, isn't it? A theme park changes the seasonality problem instantly.
It completely anchors the destination. If you have a world-class theme park, you aren't just a day trip anymore. You are a 2 to 3 day vacation. Families plan their entire year around it.
Right.
But it wasn't just the park. They talked about twinning the QEW Garden City Skyway to fix the traffic bottleneck. They talked about increasing Jugo rail service.
And a world-class observation wheel. And revitalizing the Toronto Power Generating Station.
These are capital-heavy infrastructure plays.
Yeah.
This isn't just, let's run a new ad on Instagram. This is, let's build a new city.
But there was a warning amidst all this ambition. Carol Greenwood from TIAO, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, she stepped up with a major reality check regarding the workforce.
She did. She pointed out a critical flaw in the plan. We are planning for 25 million visitors. We are building hotels and theme parks. But over 50 colleges have paused their tourism programs.
Paused them.
Stopped them completely, due to lack of enrollment or funding shifts. So Greenwood's question is totally valid. If we build the theme park and we build the hotels and we get the 25 billion people, who is going to work there?
Especially if we are already running lean with that productivity shift we talked about earlier.
Exactly. If the pipeline of new talent is dry, that efficiency we praised earlier becomes a massive bottleneck. You can't have Ontario's playground if there's no one to run the rides or check you in. She's advocating hard for workforce sustainability alongside sustained marketing funding to compete with places like BC and Alberta.
So let's try to pull these threads together. We have a massive pivot from stabilization to aggressive growth. We have a favorable economic situation where wealthy Canadians are staying home and spending money locally.
Right.
We have the FIFA World Cup acting as a huge catalyst in just a few months. And we have a government aiming for 25 million visitors.
It's a convergence. The strategy is aggressive, the economy is cooperating, mostly, and the event horizon of the World Cup is forcing everyone to get their act together. The machinery is being built. The alignment is there.
But execution is the hard part.
It always is. Daryl McMillan said it himself. The strategy is done. Now is the time to execute. Moving from a waterfall destination to a world-class, multi-day hub requires everything to go right.
Yeah.
The trains have to run, the Sherpa has to actually clear the path, and the workforce has to show up.
It feels like Niagara is at a tipping point. It's either going to become this global powerhouse or it's going to choke on its own ambition.
I think the data suggests it's going to succeed, but it's going to look different. It's going to be higher tech, higher yield, and maybe a little less mom and pop than it used to be.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We always like to leave you with something to explore on your own, and today I think it circles back to that productivity data from Blake Landry.
I can't stop thinking about those numbers. We are seeing a sector generating more wealth with fewer workers thanks to automation.
Right.
So the question is, as Niagara chases these 25 million visitors, does the future of tourism actually need more jobs or just better, higher tech jobs?
And if the answer is high tech, what happens to the personal touch of hospitality?
That's the paradox. Can a world-class destination run on algorithms? If you check into a hotel on your phone, order dinner on a tablet, and enter the theme park with a wristband scan, have you actually been hosted?
Or have you just been processed? That is a fascinating question for the industry to wrestle with. We will leave you with that to ponder. A huge thank you to BusinessLink for sponsoring this deep dive. And thank you to you, the listener, for spending time with us.
If you wanted to dive into the charts, the stats, or the breakdown of that Big Thrills campaign, definitely check out the source material from the summit. There was a lot there to explore.
Till next time, keep diving.
Take care.